Let's take a closer look at the fighting on the ground, and I'm joined now by former British Army intelligence officer and chief executive of McKenzie Intelligence, Forbes McKenzie. Forbes, hello again. Stuart, they're reporting from the east of the country. What's happening in the east in terms of the fighting?
The Russians have concentrated their efforts around Severodonetsk, and in supporting those efforts, they need to look after the supply lines. There's lots of artillery being used, which we will come on to, but the supply lines go from the Russian border down to Izium. Then there's a main road that goes from Izium to Severodonetsk, and they're really digging in and protecting that with fortifications and mines. There's a changing nature of the war that we're now starting to pick up and starting to see. And before we talk about that, the kind of tit for tat, the exchanging of geographies to the south of Severodonetsk has continued over the last 24 to 48 hours.
Let's talk about that changing face of the war. They are into a new phase, aren't they, especially around that area? What's happening there?
It absolutely feels that way. The manoeuvrist aspect of the war from the early days has now ceased. Mariupol in the south has now come to a conclusion, and in Severodonetsk, the Russians are now taking the city block by block, and they're doing that with artillery pieces such as this, the BM-21 Grad Russian for hail. Old piece of equipment from the 1960s, but effective in reducing and raising an urban landscape and then occupying that landscape. And what we'll see in the next slide is that we'll see a picture of the BM-21s in action 9 to 11 kilometres to the northeast of Severodonetsk. If you look at the vehicle is about to be ringed now, you can see there's actually a blast mark, a darker area to the bottom right-hand side as I look at it, and that's where rockets have been fired. And the second Grad has not been fired yet, and there'd be assessed to be more BM-21s, those rocket launchers, in the forest. You can see that via the kind of tracks.
Now, you mentioned Mariupol and also Kherson. They're obviously lost. The Russians occupy them, and there are reports that they simply can't provide basic public services in those cities. That's
right. Now, the areas to the south which are occupied, there's a Russian-esque system of political bureau administration be put into place. That is not keeping pace with the requirements for the medical facilities in Kherson we're hearing about, and there may be a likely impact from cholera in Mariupol.
OK. Forbes McKenzie, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Well, if you scan the QR code on your screen right now, you can listen to the latest Sky News Daily podcast. Our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, and his producer, Dominique Van Heerden, recently returned to the Ukraine for the first time since they were ambushed, and Stuart was shot in early March following that Russian invasion. They speak to today's host, Dominic Waghorn, about how much the country has changed since then, as well as what it was like for them personally as they revisited people who'd helped them. You can also subscribe to The Daily wherever you get your podcasts.